There's a decision on Rashee Rice. He will play for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2025, but it's better than we thought today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome in Chiefs Kingdom. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 back if their first $5 bet wins. Check it out at FanDuel. Today, we are going to run it down for you. Later in the show, how the offense might look different in 2025 in certain places. Before that, what is Rashee Rice's availability going to look like in this season now that there's a decision? And we will start with the details about what this outcome has rendered on Rashee Rice and what the situation is for him going into training camp in just a few days. It's right down to the wire. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting. You can find my outlets at NFL33.com and RGRfootball.com. You can find my partner, Chris, over at KC Chiefs Corner. Don't miss that. We thank you for being with us and liking, and subbing, being here on the YouTube channel, on the audio, wherever you are. And for you everydayers, thank you for making this your team every day that you do by using every outlet available to you, including the text line at 816-357-8781. This is a show that we've been waiting, thought it was going to stay quiet. Quite frankly, getting a sentence, a decision on Rashee Rice caught me off guard today. It's been absolute radio silence, right?
Not only a sentence, but like everything is done. Like his civil court cases, his criminal case, it's all done. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of shocking. But Seth Kaiser does a great job talking about it, and we'll talk about what really happened here in just a second. But basically everything got done today. All the people that got injured have been made whole, I guess as whole as they can be. And here's where we go from here.
Yeah. There's only one thing that's going to linger, and that's for Rashee himself. We'll talk about that here in a second. But this is what happened. After the result of this, Rashee Rice received a sentence today of 5 years probation, 30 days in jail. Doesn't have to be served consecutively and has to be served over the span of that 5-year probationary period. As long as he does that, keeps the rest of his nose clean, which for Kansas City Chiefs fan base is a great thing because he must stay out of trouble for the next 5 years or he gets a felony conviction. So long as he stays clean and finishes that 30 days, there's no felony conviction for him.
Felony conviction and likely to go directly to jail. So that's the big key on that is it's not only a felony conviction, he will serve probably hard jail time. And I'm guessing that the prosecutor in this case said, if you do not keep your nose clean, you will be going to jail, and we will be looking for more of a maximum versus the minimum type of sentencing that they could do on something like this.
Yeah. Now, that's the headline. That's the big banner across ESPN or whatever it is that is the bottom line. There's details in there. Now, before we even touch any of that, neither of us are lawyers in our day life or anything else, but we're giving you the details so you understand the impact on the player. And I think that the biggest impact is on the player and his mentality going into this season. Total restitution to the victims of the accident, $115K that he will have to pay out. In likelihood, that's the only number that I've confirmed at this point. Have you seen something different?
Yes. Seth actually has Chief on the North. Great. If you're wanting more information on this, we'll give you as much as we can. But he talks about how there is also a order from one of the victims that Rice is paying them $1 million. And so that is part of this. That is part of the civil case. But the whole reason that this got done the way it did is all the civil cases basically got settled in the past couple of days. And now the prosecutor is saying, okay, you've taken care of the civil parts of all of this. Now we're going to give you the public and the criminal part of it. And this is your sentence. And one of the keys that's in this, and that's a big question, is he's going to have to serve 30 days jail time sometime in this next 5 years. Don't know when that's going to be. Don't know how it's going to happen or where it's going to happen, but he's going to have to serve 30 days jail time in order to meet his qualifications for the 5 years of probation.
Yeah. And ostensibly for his function as a player on this team, this sentence will override his next contract. That is going to be part of the negotiation. So it does have a lasting impact. For him personally, my guess is he serves a week at a time for the next couple of off seasons. So congrats, you won the Super Bowl. Now you're going to jail for a week. That's probably the way that you attack that if you're advising him. Doesn't have to do it that way, but you never know.
Yeah, the question is whether or not that's allowed in Texas, and that's not something that I'm sure of. It's possible they'll allow you to do it, or they could make you do it in just the 30 days. Some states don't allow you to break up your sentence like that. So we will see.
Yeah, according to the affidavit and to Matt Derrick's reporting, it does not have to be served consecutively.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see that. So
yeah.
There's all this information coming out, and obviously it's a good thing that it's done. I cannot even begin to emphasize how shocked I am to be talking about this today, because 3 weeks ago when we talked about wide receivers, we specifically said Rashee Rice is likely going to play the entire season in 2025, and a suspension will come in 2026 once the criminal charges got done. And there was no talk about this at all anywhere. Or knowledge that this was even having a possibility of coming out, and then all of a sudden it drops.
And this, I think this is a work in progress, right? This is trying to square it away. According to the DA in Dallas County, they've been working with Rashee, and he's been doing like some PSAs about the dangers of street racing and everything, and they found that he was very cooperative, over the top, and that's probably what led to this. What I would say a lessened sentence for significant property damage, if nothing else, in this incident. I think for the football aspect of this, there's not much more that could have gone good for Rashee Rice as a person or for this team in general.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And when you look at this overall and you look and say, okay, well, the NFL's now, they've got it in its hands. They've got to make a decision as to what they're going to do. We'll get that information out to you as soon as we get it. But the reality is that it's going to be basically a done deal. And I would imagine that we're going to find out what his availability is in 2025 in the coming weeks. I would imagine the NFL had at least some kind of knowledge that something like this was coming. And the Chiefs have said what they think the suspension could be, but we will see if the league agrees with that or not.
Yeah, you never know what the league knows ahead of time, but there are a lot of scenarios around what that availability is going to look like. We're going to include all of that and what I think is actually going to happen coming up next. This is easy. Summer sports, they're in full swing, and when you're ready to get under those baseball lights, golf on the green, or take on that high-stakes soccer action, is that a thing? FanDuel's the best way to do it, no matter what. Even if you are the other football fan, it can make it that much more exciting. You're already in the flow of the action. Why not make it more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get into it right away. During it, while you're getting sunburned on the beach, you can be in the action. I've been using FanDuel forever to track my favorite matchups, keep it fresh with new daily promotions. They're fun ways to bet. There's fun ways to get into new sports, different sports, and things that you love already. Right now, if you're new to FanDuel, you're in the business because new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. Open up the FanDuel app today and get over there at FanDuel.com to get started. Make sure you check out KC Chiefs Corner, NFL 33, and RGR Football for the rest of us. Particularly on RGR, we are going through a ton of actual updates, film, etc., statistical breakdowns from all of our crew. Don't miss that. It allows us to spend time here looking at scenarios because other than the decisions today, everything about Rashee Rice's 2025 season is a scenario at this point. One thing's for certain. None of this is going to affect anything to do with training camp. If the NFL decided to suspend him for X number of weeks tomorrow, he will be at camp. He will practice. These are game suspensions. They do not take effect until the first week of the 2025 season at the earliest. But that's really all we know for certain, right? There's a lot of room for wiggle here. What do you see as your gut telling you?
Gut is that there's going to be at least 4 games. Team thinks it could be between 2 and 4. I think that the most I would expect would be a 6, but there's so many mitigating circumstances in this. He's not the face of the league, but the Chiefs have been basically the face of the league for the past several seasons, and this was a very high profile deal. I wonder if that plays into this, whether or not it should.
It's a very good point that it may. Whether it should or not, I think, is a completely different debate. But you're right; both of those are factors, and it does seem, to your previous point, that they are paying attention. So, a quote from Brian McCarthy, NFL's Vice President of Communications, that we've been watching. We have, quote, been monitoring closely all developments in this matter, which remains under review. Which means they were waiting for the decision, and now they have the information that they needed to act upon it. Now, Matt does a good job. And if you guys miss Matt Derrick, he's on with us every week on Wednesdays. Do not miss it. Typically, the way that the scenario works is a 60 to 90-day decision. Because this is so high profile, I feel like this decision could be made faster than that. My guess is about the first week of September, just before the season kicks off. That's where I feel like the NFL will make an announcement. How do you feel about it?
I think they need to do it before that. I understand that there's not really a concern as to whether or not it's going to hamper Kansas City when you make this decision, and I get that, and I'm fine. I understand the thought process, but the problem is that you've known that this is coming. You should have enough information to get to a point where you know you're going to have some kind of penalty, and I would think that you should be able to get a decision out in the next month, because the reality is if you wait, then you're in a situation where you're taking him out in the middle of the season, because his suspension is likely going to be something that will be handled in 2025. I don't have any doubt in my mind about that. So at that point, you want him to start as soon as the season starts. It's not great for Kansas City, but none of it's ever going to be great for Kansas City, and that doesn't really matter. But you don't want it to be a situation where they drag this out and it takes 90 days. And then you're talking about trying to figure out, okay, are you going to start the penalties in October, November, December? When's he going to sit out? That's not what you want to happen.
No, I don't think the NFL is particularly concerned about what we want or the team wants.
Oh, I understand that.
So that's where I'm concerned that they may drag it out there. But here's the most likely scenario in my mind, knowing that the clause that seems to be the most pertinent here is that the player personnel policy of conduct specifically talks about, quote, posing a genuine danger to the safety or well-being of another person, unquote. That is in the CBA. That is part of the policy. And it is very, very clear that what happened with Rashee Rice did endanger other people and their well-being. So I tend to think, just my gut reaction here today, that I think the NFL may try to make a pretty serious point, and I think they're going to make it more important. They might drag it out until that first week. And I think it's going to be more like 6, maybe 8, knowing that the process is then going to be appealed. Does that make any sense, or am I just overblowing this?
I don't think that he's going to appeal it. I think that this is something that is going to be a situation where he just wants it over and done with. Because I think if you look at how and I know criminal in the NFL is completely different. I get that. But if you look at everything he's done and everything that you've heard from the criminal stuff that came out today, he's been a model citizen as much as he possibly can over the past couple of ever since this happened. He is, doing PSAs. He's trying to make things right. And I understand some of those injuries you can't make right. I mean, you're not going to get that time back for those people, and I understand that. But I think when you look at this, it's a situation where he wants this over and done with. And if you do an appeal, how long does an appeal take? Especially if it comes out the first week of September that they're going to give him an 8-game suspension. How long are they going to drag the appeal out? Because at that point, if you do an appeal and it's an 8-game suspension, okay, say the appeal takes, I don't know, a month, which it shouldn't, but say it does. Then you're starting your 8-game suspension if it's upheld in October, and you're missing October and November games. So to me, I think this is something that, and this is what I really do think is going back to what I said before. The NFL has had some kind of idea. I'm sure they've been kept in the loop to some extent where the penalty was going criminally and whether or not they're going to take that into account. They already know all of that. They should be able to come up with a punishment and get it figured out to where when the regular season starts, when you're making the reality is you have to have this decision, I think, to the Chiefs before roster cutdowns, because it's going to affect roster cutdowns.
Yeah, I mean that would be ideal, right, for Kansas City. I just don't know if the NFL can move that way. The appeal process is specific, though. From the time that the suspension is announced to the player and he is notified, he has 5 days to file the appeal. Then the arbitrator will hear it, and they have 10 days to rule on that. That's it. So when you get to the appeal process, I don't think it'll take a month. It should take 2 weeks, 15 days total. I don't know if they mean business days. That's 3 weeks. Okay, so they could drag that out.
Yep.
I don't see the business days versus just calendar days designation in here in the document. So I can't tell you for certain, but that's what it appears to be for me. So either way, if they drag it out, if it's October, it would suck. You could appeal. Mid-October, you get a decision. Yes, you're talking about missing end of season games. I don't think that it comes down to that. I think it hits the just for the first week of the season. The appeal goes through. By week 2, the appeal should be heard. And at that point, we'll know. My guess is overall, he ends up doing probably either 3 or 4 games where Rashee Rice will miss this season. Bottom line, how do you feel?
But you don't think he's going to be suspended for week 1? I think he misses week 1. I think it's something that the league gets done and he misses the first month of the season. I think he probably misses 4 games.
Okay.
And maybe they come out and they give him 6 and it's appealed before the season starts, but I still think it's going to end up around 4 games.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought as well. It's just when that kicks in. Either way, it's likely Rashee Rice misses time in 2025. They have to make up for it. And there's one guy that's going to reap the benefits coming up next. Now, we've spent a ton of time on the wide receiver class. It's deep. We know that. It's so deep. Justin Ross asked to be released from this team, and he got his wish. Justin Ross is not an option for Kansas City. He cleared waivers this afternoon. Justin Ross is a free agent. I do not expect him back in Kansas City. Do you?
I don't, but I do think it's interesting with this news breaking today after the Trey Smith signing earlier this week. Now you have cap space. Do you make a move to bring in somebody else?
Not a wide receiver.
Huh?
Not a wide receiver.
I wouldn't either, but wouldn't shock me if Kansas City makes a move to try to shore up their offense. But yeah, probably not the wide receiver position.
Yeah, that's my guess. Now, whether you're right and it's weeks 1 through 4, for example, or if it does take a little bit longer and maybe it's weeks 5 through 8 or something like that, you're going to have to make up for that. And this team has been in a pattern recently for a number of different reasons of having to make a change earlier than they want to. Rashee Rice would certainly be one of those, given that he is probably their number 1 receiver, easily one of their top 3. So how do they augment? We've talked about the cutdowns, what the 53 might look like as we've gone through position reviews this lead up to camp here. I think the number 1 guy who reaps the benefit is Jalen Royals, because they're used to putting rookies into positions to learn faster than they originally intended, and I see no reason why they wouldn't continue that. I don't think this earns Sky Moore a slot on the roster, to tell you the truth. I think it's still the same. Maybe they bring him back after the fact, but I think it's Royals that gets the extra reps once we get out of training camp.
He may get the extra reps. I think the person that's going to benefit the most, honestly, is going to be Juju Smith-Schuster, because I think that they could play very similar roles. And I think that when you look at this wide receiver core, as long as you have healthy, as long as Hollywood is healthy, as long as Worthy is healthy headed into the season, you have 2 wide receivers I think you feel pretty good about at those positions. And then you add Juju to that scenario. And I do think that, we talked, is it possible Juju doesn't make the roster? Well, at this point, I think that with a no suspension coming for Rice, the likelihood of him making the roster went up. And I'm not going to say that I thought it was going to be high that he wasn't going to make it. I said that it was possible he didn't make it depending on if somebody else showed up. But now I think the reality is that he's going to step in and be that, the third wide receiver, at least to start the season. And Royals will get time, but he won't get, I don't think he'll be on the field near as much as we saw, Xavier Worthy or anybody or Tyreek Hill a couple of years ago as well.
Okay. Well, that'll be interesting. I had Smith-Schuster on here no matter what anyway, so I'm not surprised about that. I had Nico Romeo as the number 6 wide receiver making this roster. Now, it might be minutia. It might not be on the 53 because I believe you tell me if there's a suspension coming, even if it's announced before cutdown day, he still has to go onto the active roster to be suspended, correct?
I don't believe so. I think they changed that.
Okay.
I think they changed that in the previous years because it was one of those things where you're trying not to penalize the team.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll double check that while we're talking, though.
Okay. Well, regardless, that spot I think now opens up. Smith-Schuster's going to be there. Royals is going to be there. Now there's a little bit more room. I thought Nico Romeo had the in as the returner to be number 6. Now he slides up to number 5 with Rice suspended. I think it's Tyquan Thornton that ends up making this roster because of this move, at least in the interim while Rashee is on suspension, and maybe he reverts back to the practice squad after that. Hopefully he doesn't blow up in the meantime and make himself a target for someone picking him off of the practice squad or putting in a claim, which I do believe he would still be subject to the claim system were he to be on the active roster during the suspension and then be released.
Yeah, and I think that's correct. He's still going to be going through the waiver process at that point.
That's a challenge, but I think he is a guy that I've been quite intrigued by from the flashes that we saw in his previous stop and what his potential to be in this offense does. I think having him and Nico Romeo on the roster is a really intriguing way to pull up 5 and 6 and see what you can get out of it. A chemistry shift, an ability shift, a different skill set a bit. I still don't think that Sky Moore is the guy that earns a spot because of this. Do you?
No, I don't. And I think this makes Tyquan Thornton's chances of making the roster go up a little bit. I know it's not the same type of player, but when you're looking at it, if Rice isn't on the roster, at least to start the season, it would make sense that another guy that gives you something that can come in and maybe help in different ways is going to make the roster in his place. Whether or not he gets much playing time is a whole nother argument, and we can, we'll wait and see how training camp goes. But there are some wide receivers that could, get some playing time and could get some snaps and show off during training camp that would earn themselves a roster spot. The other thing that is possible, although not probable with the way the Chiefs have generally done their rosters, is they look at this and say, okay, well, we're only going to keep 5 wide receivers. I don't expect that because you could put wide receivers on the practice squad, obviously. I don't expect that. But if going into the season, we're only going to be missing Rice for 4 weeks, is it one of those things where you say, okay, well, we have a ton of offensive linemen or a ton of defensive linemen or a ton of corners, and we don't want to lose any of them? Does that play into the roster math? It could.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk defensive line tomorrow, folks, so don't miss that because all the math goes together. And this is another flavor of what has to go into that overall math. That's an interesting idea that because of this, you would only keep 5 and keep those practice squad elevations rolling, which you could then use for Thornton, could use it for Romeo if that's what you end up doing. I know a lot of folks feel like Brownlee is a dark horse to make the roster as well. I definitely feel like Elijah Badger will be on the practice squad, so you might even get a look at him.
Yeah, and the reason I'm thinking about it that way is that it's at that point you guarantee that they make the roster, and the chances of them getting claimed after making the initial roster for the first couple of weeks, it goes down, I think. Not necessarily a ton, but it goes down to some extent. So maybe it's one of those situations where you say, okay, well, we're going to go with 5 wide receivers. We're going to have, maybe you're able to get a guy like Tyquan Thornton and you like him on the practice squad and you're able to get him on the practice squad. Maybe you bring him up for a week or two for the start of the season. And then that way you are able to keep players in another position. So I do think the offense is going to have to change. They're going to have to make adjustments. Obviously, maybe it's going to go be Jaden Royals, maybe it's going to be Juju Smith-Schuster. But as long as Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy stay healthy, to me, I think the offense is going to be just fine. And I do think that you could see a huge boon to Hollywood Brown coming out of training camp if he's able to stay healthy going into week 1 because of this suspension.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The other thing that will help him is if the offense is able to be more potent because they're well rested. Tomorrow, don't miss it. We are going over the defensive line group and what it will look like going into training camp. Please join us. Don't miss anything. It's about to hit high speed like a bullet train heading for Tokyo. This training camp is going to lift off. Don't miss a day of it. Like, sub, hit the bell, be with us on audio and on YouTube, as well as all you everydayers checking us out on the text line. We appreciate you. We'll have more for you tomorrow as we keep going towards Chiefs training camp. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you then.